All right, welcome to the IU Hoops Halftime Report. Your Indiana Hoosiers currently leading the Rutgers Scarlet Knights 46-36 at the half. Let's talk about it. Some things I like, some things I didn't like from the first half. Things I like, look, obviously Indiana 1.394 points per possession. The offense, in a lot of ways, especially the first kind of 10, 12 minutes, really picked up where we last left them in Illinois with great movement, really attacking the paint, getting the ball inside. Juwan Morgan was a beast early on, had 12 points in the first 8 minutes of the game, was 6 of 6 from the field. He then went out. When he came back in, didn't really get as many touches as Rutgers obviously focused on him a lot more, and then he had to sit with the 2 fouls, so he didn't have any more production than that. But I really liked the way that Indiana came out and started this game. A little sluggish the first couple of possessions. Al and I think Rob rushed a couple of shots, but then really focused on getting the ball inside, went on that big run that obviously opened up a 12, 14-point lead. And that was really nice to see for a team that, has still, even in some of these games where they've played well, has struggled to start games, just like the Michigan State game. But Indiana really came out ready to go from the tip today, Juwan especially. And so that was really nice to see. And, the bench has really done a nice job. Devontae Green came in 12 points, doesn't have any assists, but only has 1 turnover. Indiana has 2 turnovers total. And the Hoosiers have done a nice job of getting fouled and getting to the free throw line. 15 of 18 from the line. That's really solid, and that's what you want to do against this Rutgers team. And the Hoosiers are making their free throws, which is good. And I've liked that Indiana really, for the most part, isn't forcing a ton of threes. The Hoosiers have 46 points, are only 1 of 7 from downtown. Typically, when Indiana has played well offensively, it's been one of those games where they're making threes. That's not happening today, but they're continuing to be aggressive for the most part and take the ball inside. I think Romeo forced, a three-pointer. There might have been one other one by someone that was forced, but for the most part, the threes that they've taken have been pretty good shots. They just haven't made them. But the offensive strategy and commitment to getting the ball inside has, for the most part, been pretty solid today. What I didn't particularly like in the first half, really a couple things. I mean, you guys know that I'm not a big fan of sitting guys with 2 fouls. So Justin Smith only plays 7 minutes. Rob Finney only plays 6 minutes. And Juwan Morgan only plays 11 minutes. And on the one hand, you can say, okay, Indiana's still up by 10. You weathered the storm with those guys out. Now you have a chance to really, go on a run at the start of the second half. And that's true, but it also felt like there was some momentum there in the first half and maybe a chance to push the lead out to 20 or, 24 or something like that. And you sit those guys. So, I don't know. I suppose in this game, it didn't have a huge negative effect because you're still up by 10, but I just don't like it. Because it felt like, Indiana had to play some weird lineups there for at least 3 or 4 possessions. You're playing with Race Thompson and Evan Fitzner as your big guys against Rutgers. And, because, Deron Davis, obviously, he needs breaks and that kind of thing. And so, I get it, but I'm still not a huge fan of it. The other thing that I'm, not a big fan of, and this is really 2 games in a row, is defensively, Indiana just not as locked in as we saw. In games against Iowa and against Purdue and against Wisconsin and against Michigan State, I thought the defense was better than what we saw, more consistent anyway, than what we saw against Illinois and what we're seeing today against Rutgers. Look, Rutgers not having a great offensive half by any stretch of the imagination, and Indiana's done a pretty good job of cleaning up the defensive rebounds, but Rutgers scoring 1.09 points per possession. I think there have been some times where dribblers have not been contained. There have been a couple times where 3-point shooters were left. Just a few miscommunications, a few breakdowns that we hadn't seen in prior games that we've seen. So it's, as the offense has gotten better against Illinois and against Rutgers, the defense doesn't seem to be quite as tight. Like, it's almost like Indiana's not playing quite as desperate defensively, perhaps because the offense is going a little bit better, so they don't feel like if they don't stop guys, they have no chance. I don't know if that's what it is, but the defense just not quite as on point. So I would love to see a second half where we come out and reestablish dominance defensively. And look, part of that is Rob Finney, Justin Smith, Juwan Morgan are 3 of our best defensive players, and they didn't play a whole lot. So the defense isn't going to look quite as good when you don't have those guys out there. But I would like to see us get back to that because as important as the offense is, and the offense, playing better, getting this kind of rhythm, this kind of ball movement, balanced scoring, I mean, we've needed that, and it's great. And, believe me, I'm happy about that. But if we can combine that with that same desperate defense that we played in some of these recent games, some of which we won, some of which we lost, this team becomes pretty lethal. So I'd love to see that in the second half as a springboard to a Big Ten tournament where we've really got both sides of the basketball firing on all cylinders. So a solid first half. Indiana up by 10 in a game they absolutely have to have. That's exactly what we need. Now, as a lot of these games are, I think the first 5 or 6 minutes of the second half are really key. Don't give this Rutgers team hope, because they're not going to stop coming. They're going to play hard. They're going to play tough. Based on the way the officials called it the second half of the first half, it looks like there's going to be a lot of contact called. So, both teams may end up in foul trouble. You don't want them to ugly up this game and hang around. Indiana needs to come out and assert dominance just like they did in the first half and leave no doubt about who's winning this game. And I think if they do that early, Indiana can cruise to the end of the game. If they don't, this Rutgers team is good enough and tough enough to hang around. And you do not want that, because you just don't want to bring that element of chance into the end of the game. Indiana needs to come out and dominate the start of this. And the other thing that I would like to see is a little more assertiveness offensively from Romeo Langford. I think he did more of it in the second part of the half. He had to, because there just weren't guys out there. 7 points. I thought his offensive rebound at the end of the first half was a great play. He's had some nice defensive rebounds as well. And he's gotten fouled, but one of them was on a three-pointer. He looks to me a little reluctant to drive today. I think that's such an important part of his game. I'd like to see him get into doing that a little bit more. But most importantly, really get the ball inside to Juwan Morgan. He was a man possessed early in the first half. Fresh start in the second half. He's only got the 2 fouls. Let's get the ball into him, reestablish that, and get on the road to our 17th victory, which is what we need to stay alive in the NCAA tournament. Thank you all for being here. Always appreciate you joining me on the Halftime Report. Remember, senior speeches after the game. You can watch them on BTN To Go or Facebook Live, the IU men's basketball page. You can also listen to the audio on TuneIn Radio if you want to. The post-game show will happen after the senior speeches. So obviously watch the speeches. Juwan Morgan, Zach McRoberts, Evan Fitzner, Quentin Taylor, Johnny Jager. Watch those guys. Give them the respect that they deserve. And then we will break down this win and, of course, break down this game. Hopefully it's a win. Break down this game, and then obviously if Indiana does win, we'll talk about some of the NCAA tournament implications of it with Andy Bottoms on the post-game show, and maybe look ahead a little bit to the Big Ten tournament as well. So we'll do all that on the post-game show. We hope that you'll join us, and let's go Hoosiers. Let's finish this off. Again, solid first half, but now we've got to reassert the dominance in the second half and make sure that there is no doubt about who's going to end up winning this game. Talk to you guys after the senior speeches.